Sure. Well, click on the meeting. You need to enter your name, email address. It doesn't say that. No, I just clicked it and it just came here.
But maybe you put in the chat. Maybe put chat, say your first and last name and email. Oh, see, host of US.
Oh, okay.
You can see your messages too. Joe. An email? And your email it said.
This Committee of Adjustment meeting of March the 22nd, 2022 will come to order. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of the committee, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there a disclosure of pecuniary interest, the general nature thereof? Mr. Herron?
Yes, regarding A0822 McGee, I've got a business relationship with them.
All right, thank you very much. We will now go to the planner to tell us the nature of the meeting. Per.
Thank you, Chair. So the Committee of Adjustment is holding a public hearing tonight in accordance with Section 45 of the Planning Act in order to consider 4 applications for relief from bylaw 2009-21, being a comprehensive zoning bylaw for the Township of Selwyn. Prescribed notices of the public meeting were provided by prepaid press mail to all residents within a 16-meter radius of the subject properties. Ministries and agencies were circulated via email. The subject properties were posted with a sign advertising the public hearing. The notices were also available on the township website. The notice circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public hearing or make written submissions to the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn before the variances are granted, the person or public bodies may not be entitled to appeal the decision of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn on the proposed minor variances, you must make written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn by mail, fax, email, or Dropbox. So first application tonight is A06-22. This is for 1536 Westview Crescent in the Smith Ward. Specifically, the application is for the relocation or construction of a shed having about 165 square feet or 115.3 square meter shed, and it's going to have a height of 4.88 meters. So the relief being requested is to increase the maximum height of an accessory structure from 4 meters to 4.88 meters. We have comments from Lake First Nation recommending an archaeological assessment. Of course, the Pine Ridge District School Board has submitted comments of no concern, and the Autonomy Rights and Conservation Authority recommends a planting plan and is requiring what they call a compliance report or permit regarding the initial placement of the subject shed within the floodplain without an ORCA permit. So these have been included in the conditions of approval. My report outlines that I believe the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, and I do recommend this application. We do have one comment from a neighboring property to the north. They are supporting the application. However, and speaking to on the phone with this property neighbor, they just want the committee to be aware of what this shed looks like. So included in the package for tonight's meeting in the agenda, there are photos of the shed. It's kind of a 2-story structure. It was placed without necessary permits as a prefabricated structure. It's intended to be a bunkie. However, in discussions earlier this year with our former chief building official, Robert Lamar, keeping it as a bunkie would require further info from Peterborough Public Health, because it would add a bedroom to this lot, which may require that the existing septic system be enlarged. So in discussions with Rob, the landowner has indicated that the future intended use of this structure will be as a shed only. And that's the way we've reviewed this application, as a shed. And therefore, we're only looking to increase the height of the structure to accommodate the fact that it is much larger than the height of a normal roof, right, for a shed. And those are my comments for this application.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand, Deputy Clerk, that there is the agent, Joe Dema, on the line to support this application.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
And so, Mr. Dema, is there anything you wish to add to what our planner has said?
No, I think Parrot explained it pretty much. We've kind of done things a little backwards. We are in the process of getting a brand new survey done for the property. And my wife, Stacy, and I are we've decided to put in a building application in the next 12 months to redo the cottage there and put another, building on the property. And the main use for that building is going to be to house everything that's in the cottage right now until we're able to, put everything back into the new building, at some time in the future.
Okay, all right, thank you. And is there anyone on the line, Deputy Clerk, to speak against this application?
There's no one else here in regards to this application.
All right, I'll bring it to committee. Anita?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's, if this picture is accurate, it's quite a tall building. So is it basically like a 2-story building that, or does it goes open to the ceiling, up to the rafters?
Pear?
Through you, Madam Chair. So yes, it's an open mezzanine inside, so it's a partial story. You can see down from the 2nd story to the 1st floor, right? So there's not a second floor that covers the whole structure from front to back.
Right, are there any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A0722. Pear?
Okay, so A07-22. This is for 2375 Selwyn Bay Lane. This particular application for the construction of a 900 square foot or 83.6 square meter detached garage to replace an existing detached garage. The reliefs being requested are to increase the maximum height of an accessory structure from 4 meters to 4.8 meters, to decrease the minimum front yard setback for a detached garage from 7.5 meters to 3 meters, and to increase the maximum lot coverage of accessory structures from 5% to 5.1%. This particular application, we have comments from the Tonabee Region Conservation Authority. They have no concern, and an ORCA permit is not required in this case. Curve Lake has submitted comments commenting that an archaeological assessment be completed, and the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board has submitted comments of no concern. With regard to the archaeological assessment, I find that I won't be recommending that, since the replacement garage is being constructed partially in the footprint area of an existing garage, and also within an existing parking area, which we would be considering disturbed. It would have been excavated in order to place fill and gravel and that type of thing within that parking area adjacent to the existing garage. So I'm not recommending an arc assessment in this particular case. Other than that, I find that the application meets the 4 tests of the minor variance, and I do recommend this application.
All right, thank you. And Deputy Clerk, the agent, Molly Conlon, is on the line, correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there anything you wish to add to what Per has said, Ms. Conlon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I'm just here for any questions. I think Per covered it, but if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone that is here speaking against the report?
There's no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A0822. Mr. Heron will be leaving the room. Per.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the next application is for 419 Gifford Drive. This is A08-22. This particular application is for a dwelling addition of 530 square feet or 449.24 square meters. The relief being requested is to decrease the minimum setback from the high water mark from 30 meters to 22.5 meters to the dwelling addition. We have comments from Autonomy Region Conservation Authorities recommending a planting plan and comments of no concern from the 4th Pine Ridge District School Board. Again, for this minor variance application, I find that it meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, and I do recommend this application as well.
All right, thank you. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone here to speak in favor or against this application?
We have no one here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Any questions? Seeing none, if we can maybe vote on this now while Jerry's out of the, so we have Anita moving it, Andy seconding it, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Mr. Heron? All right, we're moving on to A0522, Per.
So the last application for tonight is for 1554 Center Line. This is for the relocation, reconstruction of a single detached dwelling, 454.85 square meters. What's happening here is a little bit unusual. There is a secondary unit on the property and a detached structure, which was permitted under previous permit and previous minor variance. In this case, because the primary dwelling is being moved further away from the existing secondary dwelling, they need a new relief for the distance of 96 meters away from the principal dwelling. So that is the relief. We're increasing from the bylaw of 30 meters between the principal dwelling and secondary dwelling to a maximum of 96 meters. However, the previous minor variance, I think it was granted up to about 60 meters, but we always grant relief from the basic bylaw. So that's why the relief being requested is written the way that it is. We have comments in this case. Initially, my planning report recommended that we would go to a deferral of decision for tonight, because initially the Conservation Authority provided input that the application in their review does not conform with the provincial policy statement or the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, in that they would require an environmental impact study, otherwise known under the growth plan as a natural heritage evaluation, that would need to be approved prior to them coming around to saying it complies with applicable policy and rules. I've since had conversation just today with Don Allen at the Autonomy Region Conservation Authority, and Orca has changed their tune a little bit. They've gotten some further information from Mr. Glover and done some further internal review, and they've come to the conclusion now and recommending to me that we can proceed for this application from their point of view, either through a deferral to get the EIS before we do a decision, or we can approve it and just include the EIS or NHE as a condition of our approval. And that's going to be my recommendation tonight, as you'll see that we just move forward with this application. We approve it and we just make the EIS a condition of the approval. I hope I explained that fairly enough so you can understand it. So that is different from my planning report, as you may have read it previously. The Fourth Pine Ridge District School Board has submitted comments of no concern. So yeah, again, I may have mentioned it. So the relief being requested is to increase the maximum setback of 30 meters between the principal and secondary dwelling to a maximum of 96 meters. And I find that the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, and I do recommend this application.
Thank you very much. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone to speak for or against this application?
We have no one here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to the committee. Anita?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to archaeological assessment, are they going to go ahead with one, or have you determined through your checklist that it's not necessary?
So for this application, I find that it is necessary that the proposed structure is within 300 meters of a water course, specifically Miller Creek. It is a condition of the approval. And as I understand from Mr. Miller, he's prepared to go ahead to get one.
Mr. Glover?
Oh, sorry. What did I say?
Miller.
Miller.
It's the Miller
It's
Creek.
It's the creek that's Miller.
That's right.
Miller time.
Okay. Jerry?
I'm in. So with regards to the archaeological, those fields have been worked over the last few years, and with the plowing and everything, does that count as soil disturbance?
So through you to Madam Chair. So the archaeological checklist that we go by, the clarification note in notes specifically state that no agricultural tilling does not count towards disturbance.
Right. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve A0622, A0522, and A0722. Anita and Donna, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We have no deferred matters. The minutes of the meeting of February the 22nd, 2022. Jerry and Anita, all in favor? That's carried. And a motion to adjourn. Jerry and Andy, all in favor? That's carried. Our council meeting will start at 6.
Madam Chair, you
Yeah.
just said the wrong date to approve the minutes of March 22nd. You meant March the 8th.
Actually-
It's written there, but you just said the wrong date.
The form that I have is that we're approving the minutes of February the 22nd, 2022, which is correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was looking at the regular council one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. We're done.
Thank you, Tanya. I'll call this regular council meeting to order for March the 22nd, 2022, it being 6 o'clock. And we'll begin with our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Ashbeck. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for the care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. And I would ask that people please observe a moment of silence so that council, staff, and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Colleagues, any declaration of pecuniary interest? And clerk, please note that there was none. We have our minutes from our meeting of March the 8th. Any questions? Thank you, Anita. Seconded by Donna. All in favor? Carried. Any business arising? Not seeing any. Okay, we will go to our deputations, and we have Richard with us today, I think, coming in virtually at some point. He is going to give us a presentation on our 2020 financial statements. There's Richard. And you're muted, Richard.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, if you could just
All right.
a little bit more volume would be great. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. And I believe that, and then Lane has a report as well. So Richard, you're going to go ahead. You've got a number of slides, so.
All right. And I believe I'm sharing my screen, so just give me 1 second. All right. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can see the presentation. So yes, tonight I'm presenting the financial results and the audit results for the December 31st, 2020 year end. So within the package, you will find a number of documents, including the detailed draft financial statements, as well as this summary report that I will run through with you today, and then as well too, and it summarizes the financial statements and hopefully presents it in a more readable format for most. So first off, within the detailed financial statements is after the management report, which remains the same as prior years, is the independent auditor's report, and this is our report on the financial statements. And although it is a lengthy two-page document, we've picked out here the important paragraph that, in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Township of Selwyn at December 31st, 2020, and the results of its operations and cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that is your standard, clean, unqualified auditor's report. One thing to keep in mind too, when we say consolidated, the numbers we look at both include the operations of the township plus the library board. And as well too, when we say Canadian public sector accounting standards, so that's more commonly known as Psab, which is a different format than how you are required to set your tax rate budget. So as I go through, I will try to highlight some of those differences. Now, just moving along to the status of the audit and what we do during the audit. Just a quick summary here of some of the audit procedures we do. And of course, a lot of the work we do goes into gathering evidence so we can present our audit opinion overall. And that involves then looking at council minutes, as well as doing a lot of substantive testing and sampling and analytical review, and looking at management estimates, and then as well too documenting and looking at the systems of internal control and related testings for revenues, disbursements, payroll, and journal entries. Overall, as of now, the audit is complete pending council approval of the financial statements, receipt of the signed representation letter, and actually the last item there is now cleared off as we did get responses from your legal representatives, so that part is completed. Overall, there were no changes to our initial audit plan or disagreements or difficulties with management, excellent cooperation from management and staff, and as well too, the uncertainty caused by COVID-19 is that note is within the financial statements. Hopefully, moving forward, that can be removed, and as well, overall, there were no unadjusted differences, so that the schedule of unadjusted differences is clean. And as well too, I think with COVID and as well too, implementation of the new accounting system as well. So some things did just take a little longer to gather everything together. So then taking a look now at your financial assets overall within Psab, things are broken down between financial assets, which are assets that are either cash or will be turned into cash. Overall, this year, the township had increases in their financial assets. Overall, the cash did increase, and that's reflective of the increase in reserves. Investments grew by growth as well too. You had some additional receivables just for some specific agreements as well too, being related to fire and the water. Taxes receivable, although went up percentage-wise, still remain very good and well below the ministry level of 10% to be a low-risk area. So you're still at 5.7% of the total levy, and that's actually down from 6.2 in the prior year. So that's still good to see that you're maintaining that. And then when you take a look at this in a diagram over the last 5 years as well, you can see the continued growth in your cash and as well too, then that just coincides with the increase in your reserves as you continue to plan for future capital needs. Next, we come to your financial liabilities. So these represent the monies you owe to others. Overall, just a slight increase in your payables. So these then represent amounts owing to regular trade suppliers, accounting accruals related to that. Wage accruals, related for employees and the wage accruals there, and as well too for amounts related to developers and the deposits they provide you as well. So your obligatory reserve funds, that represents development charges, gas tax, and parkland fees, where although you've collected the money and it's within your bank account, it can't be recognized as revenue until you spend it in accordance with that agreement, those agreements, Deferred revenue this year, you can see there that it did increase, and that's just some money set aside yet that need to be spent related to MTO transit, OCIF funding, and the Safe Restart funding that was provided to deal with the pandemic, so that those amounts can be rolled forward into future years. Your long-term debt for the FIT program is just continuing to be paid down as required by the schedule, and then as well too the two unfunded liabilities you have related to landfill closure and post-closure liability and employee future benefits. They do represent a bit of an increase for landfill. That's mainly due to another year closer to closure of the Smith side, as well too with the discount factor increasing. It does impact the current cash flow values of that calculation, and as well too the employee future benefits are actuarially determined, and then those amounts then normally get included in your tax rate budget when you think you're going to incur those costs. And then next we have a 5-year summary of your financial liabilities. Next, we take a look at the non-financial assets, and in the township's case, the only non-financial asset are the net book value of your tangible capital assets that represent the historical cost of all your assets related to roads, bridges, buildings, land, infrastructure, underground services as well. So that represents the largest portion of your accumulated surplus. Next, we come along to the consolidated statement of operations in a summary format. Overall, when you take a look at the third line being the annual surplus, for Psab purposes, you can see there that there is a surplus. But as you know, when you set your tax rate budget, of course, you do not budget for a surplus or a deficit. So then the lower part here just gives you an idea of the amounts that do not form part of the Psab numbers, but you do utilize when you're setting your tax rate budget, mainly reserve and reserve fund transfers to and from, and as well too, you don't include amortization, but you include the actual cost of what you think you're going to spend on actual capital this year, and as well too, principal repayments are not considered an expense under generally accepted accounting principles. So but you still need to raise the dollars to pay that. So, and as well too, you have some unfunded liabilities that you're internally financing, and they're getting paid down as well. So as you can see there, both all three columns do come to zero, and as well too with you can see there the differences between budgeted and actuals for transfers to and from reserves as well, which then in summary explains why your reserves went up this year. We were able to transfer more, and you didn't need to take out as much as expected. And as you can see in the following slide, your accumulated surplus of tangible capital assets, net book value, you're sitting in the position you would like to be. And the fact, an indicator of financial health is that you do have more in your accumulated surplus than you do in your net book value. So yes, ideally the orange bar should always be higher than the blue bar. Next, we have a summary of your revenues and expenses and annual surplus over the years, and the annual surplus number, of course, that will vary depending on the type of capital revenues you get each year. Because under Psab, you do record the revenue in the year you earn it, but for a capital item, then of course the expense will hit in later years when you depreciate that asset. And then overall, when you take a look at the activities and the financial revenues, you can see there that 2020 was budget to actual lower, which is not unexpected due to the closure of and providing of certain services, which then resulted in lower fees. And you can see that in the decrease in your user charges. And that's mainly related to recreational items and arenas and parks where you were not able to generate fees due to the closure. Overall, both property taxes and user charges are your major revenues. Your provincial revenue is mainly OMPF, your some OCIF, as well as Safe Restart funding. The majority of your user charges do relate to water and sewer charges. And then as well to the other municipalities represent fire agreements. The one thing you'll also see here is the impact of providing a relief on penalties and interest on your taxpayers on their taxes receivable. You can see the decline there in the revenue in 2020. The reduced return on investments due to the reduction in the prime rate, you can see there also did have an impact on your investment income as well. And then as well, you can see the development charges on the gas tax monies that you did utilize as opposed to receive. So then you utilize those on various projects and roads resurfacing and roads capital as well. And then the next slide then does provide a summary of your and pie chart format as to the revenues. Next, we come along to your expenses. So when we take a look at your expenses, they do they're done on a Psab basis. So any changes related to your changes in your landfill liability, that's being reported in your environmental services. So that's one of the reasons why that is over budget, as well as amortization is included within these numbers, whereas the actual purchase of assets is not. So, and I think too, the one thing you'll find in 2020 is that your actual amortization was higher than budget. But within general government, there were additional costs related to COVID and extending amounts out to the community. Protection services amortization was just higher than budget. Transportation services, similar to that. Winter control costs were down when amortization was up. And similarly in environmental services, the big thing you will see there, which goes hand in hand with the decline in user charge revenue for recreation services, is the decrease in costs related to rec and culture services in that area as well. And planning and development as well, there was some additional costs there for some consulting and contract work related to economic development in the COVID times, but still you'll see there your revenue was below budget, and so were your expenses. Next, we take a look at just a pie chart of that, and you can see there that within your protection services is your largest expense, and keep in mind too that's where your policing costs are the main contracted services within there, and you can see there. Then taking a look at the expenses in another format, both salaries and benefits, although up from the prior year, but and above budget slightly, and that's due to the fact with the new system as well, you were able to implement and record some additional accruals related to vacation time. And then those amounts have been set aside and funded. Materials, those amounts were certain amounts within the parks and recreation area. We're not able to operate, so you see some savings there. Contracted services, as mentioned, relate to policing, as well as the cost for the change in your landfill liability flows through there. And the external transfers this year did include the about $250,000 being paid to local businesses to assist during COVID as well. So, and then as mentioned earlier, you can see the increase in amortization from both budget and the prior year. And next you will see there just a summary of the expenses, and yourself, like most municipalities, salary and benefits are the major expenses. That's how you provide your services. Excuse me. And then next we come to what I consider to be the important page of the whole document. It gives you a breakdown of what is within your accumulated surplus, and you can see there that the amounts invested in capital assets, so that's the net book value of your assets less any debt associated to them, as well as unfunded capital. That's the majority of that. And then you have your two unfunded amounts, and then as well too, both community centers are showing an operational deficit, so they do remain there. And then you come to your reserve and reserve funds. So these then are amounts you have that are set aside and you can utilize moving forward. And as well, you can see the increase year over year. A lot of the increase is being derived within the environmental services, and that's largely impacted by your water and sewer operations. So those amounts are set aside and for use in those areas by those user groups. And then you can see the 5-year analysis of your reserve and reserve funds. And then when you take a look at your tangible capital assets, you can see the various additions there. And roadways are the largest additions to capital assets, both work on sidewalks and various resurfacing projects, as well as work on the Youngs Point Road, the 15th line, and Strickland Street as well. And as well to water and sewer, you had some additions to capital, and then facilities, various improvements to the municipal office, Fire Hall number 1, the Lakefield Smith Community Center, and as well too as the senior space in Annismore. And then fire truck and snow removal equipment also were the major items added within the vehicles. And as you can see here, the additions compared to amortization, you can see there in 2018 there was a large addition to capital assets, and that large addition does coincide to the larger annual surplus we saw back a number of slides. And then you can see the additions, the net book value of your assets and how much is depreciated and how much is not amortized. You can see there within the green amounts, and as well roadways historically they just last longer, and water and sewer, of course, you had to do some required upgrades and stuff over the years, so there is historically more green in that column. And then finally your net financial assets, you can see there you do remain in the black, and as well as too, this is kind of consistent with the increase in your reserves. You can see there that you are setting funds aside so that working forward, then you can do have resources available, so you can ideally then meet all your capital and long-term needs, as well too, then being able to provide a predictable and standard growth within your tax rate, avoiding any type of peaks and valleys in setting your tax rates in the years ahead. And that is a summary of where things finished off for the year.
That's it, Richard?
I'm fine. Yes, I'm done. Yes.
Okay. Just before I turn over to Council Lane, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, definitely the impact of COVID-19 had a significant delay on the completion of the statements. And we definitely implemented a new system as well, as Richard explained.
I think we lost you, Lane. We're just going to try to recover. I think they're just doing that right now. Yipper. Okay. So perhaps Lane could come down.
Can you hear me now, Mr. Mayor?
We can with a great deal of feedback, though.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah, that's better.
We're just switching some devices up here. So I'll just start over. Definitely the impact of COVID-19 had a significant delay in the statements, as council is aware. And it is my responsibility to deal with the auditing firm and make sure the annual review is completed in an effective and efficient manner. And so I'm really pleased to get this process for 2020 completed. I want to thank my staff, specifically Michelle and Erica, for their support of the audit process. And obviously, thanks to Baker Tilly, partner Richard, senior auditor Veronica, John, and lots of other staff that were out here. With the approval of these statements, the 2021 audit starts on Monday in terms of the on-site version. So I'm confident that the financial statements for 2021 will be completed in the second quarter of 2022, and we'll be back on track again. So I believe I have a report before council that recommends receipt for information and approval of the statements as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Lane. Does council have any questions? Yes, Sherry.
Thank you. Through you. This question is for Richard. You look after financial statements for many townships, correct?
Yes. I think within our office, we do about 38 municipalities.
Okay. I don't usually ask a question without knowing the answer, but this time, this is not the case. So I would like to know, of all the townships that you look after that have arenas, do they all run with deficits?
Most arenas that aren't in large urban centers do have a tendency that they do require, in my past experience, that they do require some type of levy assistance along the way, or at least with assistance with capital, or just assistance with capital. So you do see some different type models, but there normally is some type of tax support provided.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just before I entertain a motion to receive, I had a couple of questions, either to Richard or to Lane, whoever wants to take a shot at it. First of all, opening comment, great to see a clean audit. We tend to expect that, but it's always a great thing when we get it. Go to slide 5, and I asked this question last year, and you'd indicated that we were going to do some work on it. You'll note that we went from having $10 million of cash on hand in 2016. We're now approaching $19 million of cash on hand. And so the question becomes, how do we utilize that so we get a reasonable return? And that's going to become, I think, more of an issue as interest rates rise and the opportunity to generate some revenue. And so I'm just interested with a bit of an update, because I think if I remember correctly, last year when we raised this, there was a recognition we needed to do something with it. I'm just wondering if we've made any progress on that.
I can jump in there, Richard. Yeah, definitely. This is more of an operations type question. So, no, really, there hasn't been any appreciable progress on that. It's something that's on my plan. I had some resourcing in place, but I don't know if that's going to actually materialize. But I will make that more of an effort. And as I mentioned, now that we'll get the 2021 audit back on track and out of the way in Q2, then really that's something I need to concentrate on for the remainder of the year. We definitely have limited risk in terms of what we can invest in, but as I've mentioned before, even a half point on cash balances make quite a difference for us. So definitely a priority for me, the latter part of 2022.
Okay, thank you very much, Lane. The second question has to do with slide 12, which is a comparison of our revenues, expenses, and our annual surpluses. And I guess this would be to Richard. This is a 5-year snapshot. We consistently exceed our budget expectations. We always do a budget for zero balance. We continuously end up with a surplus, and that's a whole lot better than ending up with a deficit. I get that, but is that an operating practice to be returning a surplus between $1 million and $2 million every year? Does that represent a best practice? Should we be looking at that? Is that something we should be comfortable with? Is that what you would normally see?
All right. So then just looking at this slide here, Mayor Mitchell, this then represents the annual Psab surplus. So then this number, this is this gray bar that you're seeing each year does not include actual outlays for capital or debt repayments or things like that, but it does include amortization. So if in that middle year in 2018, you can see that the gray bar is a little higher in the annual surplus than the other years, and that is reflective of, I believe you did work within the water and sewer area. I thought it was the water tower, but I could be wrong. And you did receive a grant on there. So then the grant within there, it is driving that number, whereas the expense doesn't hit till later on when you amortize that. So more so operationally, then it's looking at whether your increases in reserves and you've been able to increase your reserves, but still a lot of them are specifically, the increases are related to water and sewer. So that then in essence is not a surplus that's available for general use. So it's for those users to plan moving forward. But yeah, that's then I think too, when you look at both the results, you also then have to look at your asset management plan, your long-term capital plan, and see how all those fit together, and then compare that with the use of your reserves, so that over time then that you can, as I said earlier, try to create that predictable tax rate increase, as well as satisfying all the requirements of renewing all your assets and maintaining your service levels, and then just being able to keep that on a nice even progression throughout.
Yeah, and I get that.
Yeah,
it's wise advice.
Yes.
But I go to slide 20. What we're trying to do is to make sure we have enough reserves and not too much reserves, and there's a sweet spot in between. So our reserves have gone up 30% in 5 years. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing. So the question is it the appropriate thing that are we keeping our reserves at the appropriate level given the activities and the financial needs of the corporation?
And without knowing your long-term capital plan, I'm not sure if I can give you a definite answer on that one. But yeah, I think when you look at that and then compare the two, then that should provide you your answer. But
so as we go through our asset management plan, Lane, we'll be able to really address some of these questions, is what I think Richard is trying to say.
yeah, yes, that is correct.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd agree with that 100%, and definitely that asset management plan and the long-term financial plan, they all need to tie in together for sure.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to move the seat, or it's actually the motion in Lane's report that we need? And receive the presentation. Sherry's doing both, second by Anita. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you very much, Richard. Thank you, Lane.
Thank you.
The second item on the agenda Pierre is not here right now, but I do not believe that this is lifting the removal of a holding symbol. This is not a public meeting. This is simply a report, right, to lift that. Does anybody have any, you want to move that? Donna, do you have a question?
Yes, it is. I was just wanting for Per to refresh my memory as to what is happening at 738 Terra.
Pierre, are you out there in the Netherlands? No?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I can answer that. It's Angie.
Okay, go ahead, Angie.
Yeah, it's with respect to the Payne property, and they had done a rezoning for a small wedding venue. So a holding provision was put on the zoning, which now can be lifted.
Okay, thank you very much, Angie.
No problem. That was pretty basic, but that's as good as I got.
I remember the plan now.
So Donna has seconded it, Anita has moved it. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, we'll move on to question period. The clerk has advised me that we have 2 questions. Is there anything in addition to that, or is that what we have?
We still have just 2 questions.
Okay, take an opportunity then to read the question and provide an answer. So the first question, is it possible to get an update as to how the transition of the Lakeville campground from private management to Orca management? As you would recall, it was a very heated topic from last spring, summer. That's the question. I'll try to provide a bit of an answer here. I have been advised that township staff have been working with Orca staff and are making progress to develop an agreement for Orca to operate the Lakeville campground on behalf of the township. A draft agreement is well underway. It requires some additional feedback from our respective legal and insurance providers on language, etc. It is the hope to provide council and the Orca board with an update, including a draft agreement for consideration in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Our hope is to have an agreement finalized in Q2 so that existing campers know what to expect for the 2023 season. That was the first question. The second question is an update on the progress of the Triple T Lakeville South development process. Any plans for public forums for the community to discuss and share thoughts? And so in response, the proposed development of the area known as Lakeville South has been under active discussion for many years, and there have been upgrades completed to the township's water, wastewater, and transportation infrastructure that in part support this development area. The identification of Lakeville South as a growth area is consistent with the Greater Golden Horseshoe Growth Plan that directs that most rural growth be towards settlement areas that have access to water, wastewater, and other services. Any proposal eventually approved will need to be consistent with the growth plan, the provincial policy statement, the official plan, zoning, and other bylaws, and will be subject to site plan control. The current proponent, Triple T, has submitted a variety of planning documents to develop their property in Lakeville South. Triple T's plans are being peer reviewed, which may require further refinements on their part. There is no date nor time frame yet for when an actual planning meeting will be scheduled. When it is, this meeting will be public and allows for public input, both written and oral. The current planning application based on Triple T's first submission is posted on the township website in the planning section. Refer to C15-20. Colleagues. We will then move on to municipal officers and staff reports. And Mike, I think you are going to talk to us about the facility time allocation policy.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll very briefly go through a bit of a summary. Certainly be available for questions, and if there's any follow-up, then we can certainly take care of it then. Need to start with a thank you, certainly to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee that were very engaged throughout this process. The executive of the various organizations, both minor and adult groups, they were very well represented by an extremely dedicated group of volunteers in our community.
and really the backbone of most of our sporting organizations. Thanks to the counselors, especially Councillor Valentine and Councillor Heron, who were able to put in a lot of time and certainly hear a lot of different opinions. Need to thank staff who helped a great deal throughout this process, and especially Megan and Tanya, that not only compiled and summarized, but and made sure that all the information and all the feedback was respectfully gathered. We all realized that this was going to be a challenging issue with many different stakeholders and obviously different viewpoints. To summarize, September 7th, 2021, Council received a draft facility time allocation policy. And then as a follow-up, we had a public forum meeting in February 9th. We invited all of the user groups and anyone that wanted to have a chance to speak. We wound up with 12 pre-registered groups that represented many of the local groups. We had a very good blend of adult groups and minor groups. The PowerPoint presentation that happened that night is included in the report, so I won't go through that, but it did go through a typical process for scheduling and how to resolve any potential conflicts, which whenever you're trying to represent and schedule many different groups, there's always going to be a certain amount of that. Nobody was surprised by the conclusion that largely the adult groups wanted us to go on legacy as our priority, and the minor groups were certainly more leaning towards putting a priority on minor sports groups first, which is a little more in keeping with some of the ones that we had researched. The follow-up to that was February 16th to 23rd. We had Prac Meeting, my Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, sorry, use the acronym, where they reviewed the policy, made a few edits, and then created the recommendation, which is part of the report as well, for council to approve the policy that they had amended with some fairly minor changes, certainly important wording changes, but nothing really substantial. Once everything was received, considered, I won't go through the resolution because you guys not only had a chance to review it, but if there are any questions about it, we can cover those. But once everything was received and considered, council still have 3 separate options that we feel were important enough to make sure we put in the report. 1, adopting the facility time allocation as recommended by Parks and Rec Advisory Committee with the amendments. 2, maintain the status quo exactly as we do right now, which again is in the PowerPoint presentation. Council who have been on council for a number of years are aware of the policy or the procedure that we go through annually to meet with all the groups and then work through a schedule that's fair and consistent with what we've done in past years. The third option that we feel council has, staff, is to defer the consideration of the policy for another season to provide time to explore the potential that for some of the proposed alternatives that have been raised through these discussions, and look at even more possibilities and give a little bit of time to go through those. There's been a very active engagement, and we've had good participation by all groups, and think that there might be an opportunity to adjust a little bit and still achieve what we were hoping to set out from the beginning. Staff did make a recommendation for option 3 at this time, and for questions.
Thank you very much. And so, just so that I understand, your suggestion, your recommendation, Mike, is option 3, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Yeah. Okay, Donna?
Yeah, thank you. Through you. I'd like to make, I guess you could call it a little speech. And also I would will be repeating some of the thank yous that Mike did, but I think it's important. And then I would get to the supporting a recommendation just with a slight caveat to it. So I'll start with the background information. I'd like to thank all the stakeholders and members of the community who took the time to reach out to staff and counselors. I also appreciate the hard work done by the Parks and Recreation Committee and our Parks and Recreation Manager, Mike Richardson. I will speak primarily for the Annismore Community Center because that's the one that I'm most familiar with. It was originally built in 1972 for the community, by the community. The slogan then was "A rink for you" in 72. Then when we did the latest renovation several years ago, the community stepped up to the plate in a big way, contributing more than $500,000 between corporate and private donations. Therefore, I believe we owe it to the people to ensure that we are running our facilities in a fair, open, and transparent manner. I would also like to thank Jason Gillian for attending tonight. He's been involved in playing and coaching at all levels for many years. He's also contributed significant funds to support many aspects of our operations over the years. So I would agree that we adopt recommendation or endorse recommendation number 3 with the caveat that further, if and or when an ICE allocation policy is to be created at any time in the future, that stakeholders and council will be involved in the process as it was in 2022.
Thank you, Donna. So you're gonna move
I would move that.
3 with that addition to it. Gary? You'll second that? Did you want to make any comments generally?
Thank you. Through you. Similar to Donna, sitting on the Park and Rec Committee, I've got a little prepared notes here, so I don't screw this up. And I've said all along this decision might be one of the biggest ones we make on as a council this term, as this affects a lot of our customers, and the passion for hockey in our community is immense. We need to get this right, and an unwavering decision is unacceptable in my opinion. Just want to thank Mike for his time as he's met with and talked with every user group trying to help put something together. I'd like to also thank our Park and Rec Committee, as Donna did, and Mike for their time, due diligence, and most importantly, their engagement in this process. That is one hell of a committee there. There are other members of the community that have worked behind the scenes. I will not mention names, but they know who they are, and I thank them. I will be supporting the defer option tonight for the following reasons. The fundamental question being asked with this policy is simple. Do you want minor hockey to have more priority than the adult leagues? Plain and simple. It's cut and dry. And I don't agree with that. I believe they are equally important, and they both play a vital role for different and important reasons in our community. And they should be treated with the same respect. Minor hockey will always need more ice time. It's simple math with the number of users. At the public meeting, we heard different reasons for why both are important, and I believed every single reason that they gave. We also heard everyone wanted to work together to come up with a solution. I'm not so confident in that portion of it. Some, not all, have had their heels dug in and will not budge. We need the user groups to put their money where their mouths are and actually work together. I believe with this deferral, we'll have ample opportunity to come up with a schedule that everyone can live with. Will everybody be 100% satisfied? Not a chance. But a compromise can be reached, and I'm confident of that. The last 28 years, I've been in the logistics game, and one thing I've learned is that there is always a solution. If you stare at the problem long enough, you will find that answer, and I believe that to be true in this case as well. The answer is there, and we, meaning the township and all the user groups, just need to find it. Compromise will be the answer. Rethinking the practices. Half ice only, practice in Lakefield, single night for men's hockey, rotating through the 7 a.m. times, etc. The list goes on. There will be an answer there. And I don't claim to know minor hockey and men's league hockey and the nuances of it, but I think we need to get creative and think outside the box. And let's be honest, if you're playing Pee Wee or Bantam hockey in Annismore or Lakefield, ride's over, cowboy. You're not making the show. So maybe we don't need the kids on the ice 4 or 5 times a week. Again, there are solutions. As far as the idea of building a new rink, this was the most ridiculous idea I heard. We're not using all of our prime now, so suggest we build a new rink is borderline insanity. You either have your head in the sand, are ill-informed, or you just want to blow money that isn't yours, to be honest with you. I trust this council will make the right decision tonight, and I'm confident we'll find a path forward together.
Thank you, Jerry. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through you. I attended the public meeting via Zoom to hear the delegations and their wants and needs. We've operated without a policy to date, and what became clear was that the groups must work together and cooperate to achieve compromise. The only solution offered was, as Jerry mentioned, to build another arena, which is untenable. We're a population of 17,000 plus people, and we already subsidize the arenas through taxes and our insurance, etc. So at the end of the day, the groups need to work together towards a solution with what we have. I don't believe the council should be treated as King Solomon, where we have to make a decision. Instead of dealing with a baby, we're dealing with arenas. And I think it should be the groups involved to be coming together to come up with a solution. I support option 3. I want to thank also the stakeholders that were involved, staff, the counselors that were on the Parks and Rec Committee. I think you've all worked really hard, and I think that option 3 with the addition that Donna has given is the best route to take. Thank you.
Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo what my colleagues have said. I too watched the Zoom meeting, and I was pleasantly surprised at the passion and the well thought out comments that were made. I personally don't play hockey. My kids didn't play hockey, but I know that in our township, hockey is a big thing. And as Donna pointed out, the group in Annismore that helped to rebuild and to build the original, there's so much community support and again, passion. So I heartily endorse the third option as well. And I agree that it's not something that we should be rushing into, because really it's just sort of come to a head, fairly recently, to the extent that we're actually talking about an ice allocation policy. But I think this is something that if we can get all the groups to work together, we will come up with a reasonable solution in the end.
Thank you very much, Anita. I've got a couple comments to make, and then I'll turn it over for a vote. So first of all, I haven't played very much hockey myself. To go back to Jerry's comment, it was about 6 or 7 when people realized that I wasn't going anywhere in the hockey world. So, but I tried. But I have over the years become very involved in swimming. And one of the similarities is in the swimming world is trying to accommodate scheduling for those who are just learning how to swim at 5 and 6 years old to our master swimmers, some of whom are actually close to my age right now, and trying to find, instead of arena time, trying to find pool time for all of these folks. And Mike, it's not an easy job to try to accommodate all of that. And so I want to thank you for all of the work that you've done, for what the committee has done, for what all the stakeholders have done in coming forward. I want to echo just a bit of what Donna said in a slightly different way. We tend to think about communities as, our roads and our bridges and our buildings. But communities are more than that. Communities have a heart and a soul as well. And in a sense, our arenas help nourish and facilitate that. Because it's more than just the leagues and more than just the teams. It's our community members who engage in that. We bring our kids up there. We form friendships there, some of which last for a lifetime. It's part of what makes Selwyn a very special place. And that's why it's so important that folks come together to find a way to make this work. It's like anything. Nobody is likely going to end up with 100% of what they want, because if that were to be the case, then somebody's going to end up with a whole lot less. If everybody gets 80 to 90% of what they want, puts a little bit of water in the wine, as the saying goes, then we probably got where we can get to. And you know what? I have every confidence in the people of Selwyn. We're a great community. People have always worked together. Donna pointed out the beginnings of the arena in Annismore, the community center, and the work that was done. I think it's 10 years ago now when a renewal was done. And so we'll get her done. So I support option 3 with the amendment that Donna's put forward. And I look forward to our community coming up with a solution that works for everybody. So on that note, I will call the vote. Donna, yes?
Could we have a recorded vote, please?
Absolutely, Madam Clerk.
Just give me one sec here. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Senes?
Yes.
Counselor Ballantyne?
Yes.
Counselor Heron?
Yes.
Counselor Locke?
Yes.
And Mayor Mitchell?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we're going to take a short 2 or 3 minute break, and then we'll continue with the rest of the meeting. So we'll return at 7:02. Okay, colleagues, we're back and we have our second staff report, this time from Lane on the Woodland Acres Water and Sewer budget. Lane, are you there? Okay.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Hello, Lane.
I'm pleased to present the 2022 Woodland Acres Water and Sewer Budget for council consideration. I wanted to thank Adam for his support on the documents and specifically that capital project information that was included. As noted in the report, the annual water and sewer operating charge in Woodland Acres hasn't changed since 2019. That was reflective of council direction really to provide a stable rate in the COVID-19 environment that we were operating in. And also recognition that the fixed capital charge that had been in place since system upgrades back in 2002 was actually ending. So indeed in 2022, the fixed capital charge to each household will no longer be required, as that internally financed debt is now fully paid. So with that substantial annual charge completed, Adam and I have developed a renewed operating budget, calculated that. The rate reflects the establishment of this new maintenance budget, updated Peterborough utility charges, and reserve allocations for both water and sewer in the service area. With respect to the capital investments, I'll note that the generator project for the booster station did start in 2021. The conduit, concrete pad, and fencing has been installed, as shown in the document. The actual generator has experienced delivery delays, but it is expected to arrive this summer, and the project will finish up in 2022. The annual rate is proposed as roughly $12.50. It reflects a reduction of over $360 per household for water and sewer. And this charge is to be included in the annual tax rate bylaw, which will be presented to council in April. I'd be pleased to answer any questions if council had any.
Okay, council, questions? Okay, somebody want to make a motion? Jerry, move the report, seconded by Jerry. All in favor? Okay, thank you, Lane. That takes us on to our consent items, and I will take, anybody wants to poll? Yes, Sherry?
5B.
Yes, I want to talk about 5B myself. Anybody else? Yes? Yeah. 8A. Okay, 8A is which is it?
Parks and Rec.
Oh, Parks and Rec committee. Okay, sorry. Anything else? Yes, Donna?
5B as well, and 615
615, which is okay.
correspondence.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to do 5B and then 611. So we have 4 items then: 5B, 611, 615, and 8A. So there were several people that wanted to do 5B. So I think Sherry was first.
Yes, thank you to you. I'm glad to see that we have this before us and something can be done with Water Street. As has been mentioned before, it's a gateway to the coming into our township via boat. And Water Street right now is in such a mess. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so I'm glad to see we're moving forward with it. My question is, it says that the work would start in April. Would that be April 1? No.
Yeah, I don't have the actual start date. It would just be April. So whenever we can get in there and get in the road.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anita, you want to speak to that?
I just want to say that it's wonderful that it's actually going to be happening. As Sherry points out, the Water Street is in rough shape, has been in rough shape, and it's going to be really good to see it being rebuilt along with all the additional things that they have in the report. I think it's the King Street or Burnham. Anyway, there was a little bit extra added to it. but I think that people are going to be very happy to see the work finally happen.
Thank you. Donna, do you have a comment?
Thank you very much. Through you to Angie, my question is related to the excess soils and the regulations. If I read it correctly, you spoke mostly about soils that passed testing, and I just wondered if any soils were found that were designated contaminated, what would we do with them?
Yeah, we would have to, if there was a presence of hydrocarbons or other materials that we weren't able to take them at the landfill, we would have to take them to a specially designated site.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, I have a question. First of all, really glad to see this work moving forward. I see that as we had indicated before, we're doing it in phases. We're looking at the phase 1, which is this year, 2022 budget, $1.868 million. And I was just wondering, Lane, could you just refresh our memories, the sources of funding, where that 1.868 is coming from?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. There's definitely many sources that we're drawing on. About 900,000 of the project is coming from water and sewer reserves. So the users of the system have actually set aside that money. While we will be drawing some money out of reserve, the actual source of that funding was the grant. So about 450,000 came from the provincial grant, and about 500,000 from the federal gas tax grant as well. And I say about 500 there because it will be impacted by the price of resurfacing this year. So we use that for resurfacing as well. And there will be some development charge that is applied against that project for the upsizing of the water main along there, because that will be a secondary trunk feed to the west side of the village. So those are the 4 primary funding sources.
So in reality, the work being done on Water Street in 2022 doesn't have any impact on the levy.
That is correct. It's all user reserves or grants that have been set aside for this purpose.
Okay. And my second question, and you may not be able to answer this, do we anticipate there needing to be road closures as the work is conducted this summer, spring and summer?
I can answer that. We're not expecting any road closures. There may be times where it's closed temporarily, but they will have traffic control and maintain a lane of traffic as much as possible.
And people will still continue to have access to the trail and be able to walk along there as they come.
That may not be a possibility, particularly in phase 2.
When you say phase 2, that would be 2023.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll have to, yeah, safety will come first. So if we think that we don't want pedestrians there at all, then there won't be any access. It won't be pleasant for a couple of years for certainly the people living along there, and it will impact trail users for sure.
And as we always do, we'll communicate frequently, often, and in many different ways to let people know what the situation is down there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So that takes care of anything else in 5B? No? Okay, then we go to 611. That was the one that I had, and I was just wondering, taking the opportunity, that's on the fire services issue. I'm just wondering to Janice whether we had any update on what the fire marshal is up to.
No, not yet.
And they stuck to the 30-day commenting period?
We haven't heard anything different.
Okay. Stand by, I guess. Okay. Number 15.
Yes, just in case council missed this, it's a thank you letter to Public Works for the great work that they do. And it was actually said that beats the standards of Peterborough County and maybe all of Canada. So I'm sure that Rick has seen this and passed it along to his staff. And I think council should congratulate them as well. I think that's pretty good accolades.
Yep. 8A. It was economic development.
Yeah, it talks about the municipal committee survey, a summary of comments, recommendations included next term of council, standing committee be dissolved and ad hoc committees be created as projects emerge. So what was that particular discussion about?
I'll start an answer and then I'm going to ask Sherry to fill in the blanks. So there was, what committee members, this is specific to the economic development, were desirous of working on very specific projects as opposed to a policy type of role. And so their thought process, and we haven't finished the discussion, Angie might want to add to this too, was would it be a better format to simply say, okay, this is the specific project that we want to work on, and let's create an ad hoc committee whose only role is to do that project. And then when that project would be completed and there's a new project, you would have another ad hoc committee. It might have different memberships because you may have different people who have an interest in that would go on to that. So that was the discussion that was put on the table. So rather than, people were very desirous of rolling up their sleeves and working on a particular project. Angie, did you want to add to that? I don't know if that sort of captured it, if you wanted to add something.
No, I think that captures the conversation.
And so we're returning to that conversation on Monday night. Is it this month or at the end of the month for the meeting? So what is the conversation that we've had so far is to dissolve it as a standing committee and replace it with an ad hoc committee in brackets S that would be focused on specific projects one at a time. So that was conversation, and it was a desire amongst members, and I think it, you know, good desire is to roll up their sleeves and work on something tangible. They like to see a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, that is, so we ended up, it was 8B that we pulled. Okay, so nothing else. I'll take a motion to receive all those. Donna, second, Anita, all those in favor, carried. We have no petitions. Council portfolio updates. Donna.
Thank you. The link, I was only able to receive 1 or 4 days worth, March the 1st to the 4th. And Route 31 had 92 riders, Route 32 had 65. And the good news is that both routes increased their weekly ridership. Library, we normally have a meeting on this same day as council, but it will not be held until next Tuesday, so I have nothing new to report. Parks and Rec, nothing new to report. Fire, nothing new. And Police Services Board, our next meeting is not until April the 25th.
Thank you. Sherry.
Thank you, through you. As mentioned in the Economic Development Business Committee minutes, you might not have seen it. And for the benefit of the media, if they're watching, the old Bridge Inn in Young's Point has taken over where Leguano Shoe Store was located on Queen Street in Lakefield. They're going to offer pre-made gourmet meals for pickup, and it's called Inn Cuisine. 58 and 25 Queen Street are both available for lease. There's a lot of building permit activity, and we should see a good first quarter for the township. One of the 3 condo units has been approved for a building permit at the Lilacs of 20 units. There have been hundreds of inquiries with regards to it, and the condos will be sold, not rented. I'm being told the traffic is just like the summer going along Curve Lake Road right now because people are going up there to get their gas. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Public Works and Recreation.
Carbon tax coming in effect April 1st. That should drive her right through the roof. With regards to the park and rec, obviously we've been working on the ice allocation. Ice will be out tail end of March, first week of April, depending on how the Chiefs do with their playoff run. Then they'll make the decision on which one they pull first to finish off. As far as the roads go, now that snow's melting, you can see that they must have had a really good deal on sand. Everything's pretty much a beach out there. Can't wear my flip flops down the road anymore. You can sand in there, really annoys me. So they're hoping if Mother Nature cooperates to start sweeping next week. Then again, I'm not sure of the order that they're going to do it. Paved roads, of course, will be done first and let the tar and chip go. They have been patching up the roads because, as you folks had mentioned about Water Street, all the potholes are really rearing their head right now because of the freeze thaw, right? So other than that, boys doing a bang up job.
Thank you, Jerry. Anita?
Nothing really to report. Our Accessibility Advisory Committee and our Heritage Committee meets later this week, so I really have nothing to report.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of things from my end on the public health side. There were changes that were made in terms of mandates as of yesterday. Just to remind folks, though, that in healthcare settings, congregate living settings, long-term care settings, and medical settings, mask mandates are still in place. Public health urges everybody to assess their own risk and where they feel they're in an at-risk situation to continue to wear a mask. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is Sherry and I are working at the county through the development charge bylaw process, which has been a very in-depth and fulsome process. And so, and we have a very hard deadline on that. We have to get it done by the 2nd of May. So I'll have more to update on that later on. So that's all I have to say. Any other new or unfinished business? Sherry?
Yes.
And then,
Angie's thing.
Yeah, we have a resolution for a grant, Mr. Mayor.
Right, and is that your item, or do you have?
No.
So we'll do Sherry's first because I recognize it first, and then we'll do Angie's.
Okay, through you, I just wanted to thank staff and my colleagues who came to support me and for the cards, letters, and well wishes. Thank you.
Angie, you wanted to propose a motion.
Yes, thank you. So we are going to be applying to the Infrastructure Canada Active Transportation Fund with the hopes that we might be able to get some funding for the Fairburn Street Trail. The application is due on March the 31st, and we do require a council resolution to support moving forward with the application. So just looking for a mover and a seconder for that resolution.
Councilor Herron?
If I could, if there's one grant you guys are gonna get, please make it this one. No, with that.
Okay, so move the Councilor Herron, seconded by Councilor Locke.
Just had a
A
question.
comment from Councilor Bell.
Through you to Angie, will the township have to meet some part of that grant, or will that be large enough, or probably don't know the size of it yet, but should it pretty much be enough to complete the project?
Sorry, Donna, I don't have all the details on the application, like the split of funding or the maximum amount. We can get that for you, though.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, colleagues, we have bylaws. We have the holding zone removal, which we dealt earlier with. We have the Water Street project of the contract, and we have the court security grant. Moved by Anita, seconded by Jerry. All those in favor, carried. Confirming bylaw, moved by Sherry, seconded by Donna. All those in favor. And we have a adjournment from Jerry, seconded by Anita. All those in favor. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you to staff very much.